Welcome to Last Call with Jamion Christian. Our guest today, Dr. Rosie Mead, the creator of Aligned Athlete, which is all about empowering athletes to feel aligned in training and lifestyle. Dr. Rosie Mead, how are you today?
Hi, Jamion. Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited. You're joining us from the UK. So, we're reaching worldwide now these days, which is great. And again, I'm thankful for having you on here. I'd love to just kind of dive into this. I love looking at your background. My guests always wonder like how I find people. And a lot of times it's through social, just trying to follow like really, really enlightened people who are really trying to change the world in whatever way they have the ability to do it. And I came across your page and I was like, wow, this is really interesting stuff. And then kind of looking into your background, how you've been in music and now you're diving into sports. So I just want to try to chat about all of it. And so we'll try to tackle this thing now. Tell me just a little bit about your background and how we sort of got here.
Yeah, so my background is diverse. So like you say, it's kind of music. So my academic background is in like psychology, neuroscience, sociology, mainly around music in those fields. And then I've been really fascinated around music in sports psychology and how we can consciously use music to help us perform at our best. So I kind of, during lockdown, to be honest, started exploring more of that kind of sports psychology, music psychology, looking at the mindset side linked into the music, how music makes us feel, but actually it's deeper than that. It's kind of the mindset side as well. And then I started working with like endurance athletes. That's where I started in the sports world. I worked a lot with triathletes, with endurance athletes who, some of them were taking on like crazy challenges. I worked with a guy who did like a big Guinness World Record. So I was really fascinated by the kind of the mental skills that you needed to kind of get you through things like that. And then so I'd worked with a lot of different athletes. And then literally probably about this time last year, I just felt a draw to basketball. And there's no way to explain it really, other than I literally just felt kind of a draw to it. So started applying a lot of the work that I'd been doing with triathletes and endurance athletes to team sports, so specifically to basketball. And I've just fallen in love with it. I mean, I'm talking to the converted. I love this space. And, we're seeing like real like progress and transformations with using this kind of work. But that's a kind of, it's been quite a different journey to where I am now, because I came from that kind of music psychology side into this space.
To get to where we want to go, we often have to see it from a different perspective. So I'm sure that's welcomed inside our community as you're kind of learning that. My dad was you probably didn't know this. My father was a track and field athlete, All-American, all those things. And we would always have this debate, about being an individual sport, that you're on a team for a team score, or on a team sport where everyone's kind of working together. What are some things that you've seen just in your time working with, again, if you're doing a triathlon, you have to be really mentally strong, but it's in a singular fashion. What are some things you've seen with those type of athletes versus people involved in team sports?
Yeah, so it's been really fascinating for me. I mean, the way that I work is always at an individual level. So far I haven't worked with the whole team. So the way that I work is still very similar in terms of triathletes. But I guess even if you're an endurance athlete, you're, track and field, or you're doing solo, you've got that support network around you. So it's still, you still got that kind of how you manage those like dynamics and relationships. And so as a kind of an observer to this, I found that really fascinating in terms of the dynamics with teams, but also how you get that as an individual athlete as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you're that community is different because it's so different because it's like you're saying, you're on a team, but everyone's sort of going through their own thing and trying to get the best time they can get. It's just such a different thing than when you're where you're with the same people every single day. But I guess in their way, our human spirit is fighting to be part of a community. So I guess you're feeling like you're part of that community.
Yeah. And that, for when I worked with the guy that did the Guinness World Record, that was very much it, was kind of helping him to feel, you're still part of this wider community and having, because we do, as humans, we crave that kind of connection. And I think sometimes being in a team sport, maybe we take that for granted, that, you're surrounded by everyone and you do have that kind of community that you don't necessarily have when you're doing as an individual athlete.
Right. Yeah, obviously, then you get a chance to kind of dive into basketball some. Um, what I mean, it's different. You're around a lot of obviously European basketball, so you have players coming from the United States coming over and they're learning how to get acclimated. You have players from there. What are some tips and tools you use with them just to kind of get to know them at the beginning?
Yeah, so that's the bit that I love. I mean, that's kind of the whole basis of this, is really getting to know the individual, where they've come from, knowing about what makes them tick, because that's the thing, even though you're in a team sport, you as an individual, there's all these things that you value and make you tick. And so that's a lot of kind of what I do at the beginning, is that deep dive on, who are you underneath being a basketball player? That's just a label that you kind of given yourself.
Yeah.
But it's like, actually, who are you underneath that? And that has been really insightful for the athletes themselves, I think, is to actually just, take a moment and kind of reflect on actually what makes you, aside from being, a point guard or, or
Yeah.
whatever kind of label you're going to give yourself.
Yeah, the label is so interesting because in some ways it really empowers us, and in some ways really holds us back. And as you get older, everything needs to evolve. And so like not that label holding you back from evolving. I see it all the time when I have players that are coming back from playing or whatever, and I'm just always trying to encourage them to try to find ways to evolve.
Yeah, I think that's so important that, we look at that like personal growth. So that's kind of a big part of my own work, is that looking at personal growth, personal development, how you can be the best person, as well as performing at your best on the court, but it's also how you perform at your best off the court as well.
Yeah. Let's dive into that music background a little bit, because I do find that really interesting. You'd often find me late night watching music documentaries, and my wife would always wonder why. And I feel like the art of performing, in front of people that are cheering or booing, the preparation that it takes. Just let's dive a little bit, and you just kind of take it here. Talk about the music, your music background and how it supports what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I think, that's probably the draw to the sports side is, I'm a musician. So it's having that kind of that performance, like you're saying, you're stepping into a role, you're performing, you don't quite know how people are going to respond, and you're focusing on what you can control and trying not to focus on kind of the external things too much. And I think there's a real link with that, and performing as an athlete. But there's also the side of, how do we consciously use music to step into the zone or step into how we want to feel, which is a really big part of my work, which maybe we'll kind of delve into in a bit. But listening to playlists, I think, actually basketball players, the more that I talk to my clients, it's a real culture. Everyone uses music, and they do tend to use it quite consciously. But it is really delving into, like, how do you want to feel when you're on the court? How do you want to feel as you're preparing to kind of step on into that space? Or, for training, how do you motivate yourself? How do you keep yourself going? And how music can play a massive role in that. So not just kind of having it on in the background, but actually being conscious about the music that you're listening to and what you're putting into your mind.
Yeah. Well, take me through that. Take me through the that journey to figure out what's best to listen to and when, and how you sort of help each client kind of figure that out.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, because some clients are like, nope, I got my playlist, I'm all set, I'm all good. And others are like really open to kind of, like, oh, maybe I'll start to explore, because obviously it's so subjective. I can't kind of say, well, like, listen to this music, but it is about, I mean, first of all, I talk them through how they want to feel. That's a massive part of my work at the beginning, is looking at, well, how do you want to feel when you're playing basketball? How do you want to feel when you're stepping off the coach and you're, warming up on the court? It's a really deep question, is these kind of, how do you want to feel? So is it like confident or strong or powerful or whatever it is that's kind of entering your mind? So it's like, okay, take you back to what are the songs or the artists, or, some people are very based on the style of music or the tempo maybe, whereas other clients might be focused on the lyrics, really powerful motivational lyrics. So kind of working out what music is going to help you to feel that way and step into that zone. And then try, if we can, to kind of protect that music as well. So you're not just kind of listening to that playlist all the time. It's like you've created something that's special, that is going to be that trigger. Like we know, like music's such a big trigger for kind of like bringing back emotions and feelings and memories. If you've got previous memories associated with pieces of music, that's really going to kind of help you to step into that picture that you're visualizing of how you want to be on the court.
Yeah, what is, obviously you have a neuroscience background, some of this stuff. What does the neuroscience tell us about obviously the preparation for the moment, but also the music behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is where I'm really fascinated. So a lot of my work outside of sports has been in like dementia and looking at how music impacts the brain in that way. And so there's a lot in terms of how music is giving your brain a full workout, to be honest, when we listen to music. So you think about working out your body. Well, music's doing very similar to your brain, but if you're listening to music that you have like previous memories associated with, music that's quite emotive, you're like, I think of it like a Christmas tree. You're kind of lighting different areas of the brain at the same time. And so, that's kind of getting it gets you going. That's why music kind of is so emotive, and can get us kind of into that zone. It is literally that workout for your brain, but it's not going to be all music. So it is that's where it comes back to the kind of the conscious side of you consciously choosing what you listen to.
Yeah, I remember going through as a player, and I never really needed to be hyped up. So I often felt like when I went in the locker room and everyone's like banging the lockers, that was almost like a distraction to me. It was like too much energy. It was like too much energy flying around for me. I sort of needed it to be, I would be off in the corner by myself trying to listen to whatever I was listening to, just to put myself in a. I always wanted to be even. I want to be in a position where whatever happened, I could be agile enough to react and have enough confidence to react to that situation. That was one of the things that I try to push that to our teams as well. I don't know if that was good, that might be bad, but I always recognize, I would say before the game, guys, let's make sure we have space for everyone to kind of operate in the way that they need to operate. So if you have guys who need to read the Bible on one side, and you have guys who need to listen to rap music on the other, like let's have a locker room space where everybody can sort of get prepared in their own way.
I love that, because that's the thing. It's so subjective, isn't it? I mean, I have some clients who just don't want to listen to music because actually they're like, no, that's going to be a distraction for me. Others will want to listen to something that, gets them pumped, gets them fired up. Whereas others are like, no, that's going to make me go kind of, that's just too much for me. Like you're saying, they want to kind of calm it back down. And it's the same with, different mental skills. It is about kind of that. It's so subjective, and it shouldn't be like kind of prescriptive in that way either. So it's great that you've got that space where kind of everybody can, make the most of what works for them.
How do you figure out, individually, we might not be able to hire a coach like yourself. How do you figure out sort of individually what's best for you?
With music, it is about finding, again, if I start off with the feeling side, how do you want to feel when you're on the court? It's like, well, the music that maybe you already listen to, that there are certain pieces that get you into a particular mood, or help you feel a certain way, or bring back particular memories that bring back those feelings, because we're bringing it into the present day. So it is really about kind of just being conscious about the types of music, the style, the artists that you really resonate with, because my music is rock music. That's not going to be the same for kind of every client. So and that's where it kind of, music just, it can't be prescriptive. So I'm really about educating people so that we consciously listen to it. I often use the phrase, be your own DJ. And it is that, like you've got to kind of create that yourself. And sometimes trial and error.
You made me think, like we would go through a practice with majority of guys on our team, and it would be about, talk about the games when you played the very best. And it'd be like this whole discussion basically when you played the very best in your lifetime. And they would say, I had X number of points against this team. And that's all right. Well, tell me what was going on that day. Tell me what was going on. And we try to get this whole picture of kind of what was going on, and then try to take, their 5 best opportunities and see if there's any similarities. But I never thought about what were you listening to that day.
Yeah.
I just never thought about that. And I know, how that kind of like triggers, and I just never thought about that part.
Yeah.
We talk about maybe what you were eating that day, or, we would kind of go through this whole thing. It was weird. We'd have this conversation. A lot of times guys really played their best when there's a level of trauma going on in their life.
Mm.
And not always like excruciating trauma, but it could be, it could be anything. It could be mom lost her job the day before. It could be things that are just normal life things that are traumatic. And I was amazed when I had this conversation how many times they were going through, like 3 out of the 5 stories would be something traumatic was going on in their life, and they were able to just kind of like turn that switch. I always thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Maybe kind of like throwing yourself into, as a potentially as a kind of a coping mechanism, but like you've kind of got that like fire and you're, throwing yourself into the zone as a way of kind of, creating space to cope through that trauma. That's
But I
really interesting.
I never thought about the music though, because I guarantee if we would have asked that question, they would have named 3 or 4 songs they had been listening to.
Yep.
They would be able to go and say, I was in the car listening to this, and because it's weird. The music is something that sticks out and that remains long after the memory.
Yeah, and being really conscious about, what you're listening to. So again, the type of lyrics that you're listening to, it might be a track that you've listened to over and over, but actually, is that the kind of appropriate track on game day? Is it, something that's maybe bringing you down a bit, or or it's raising you up that bit too much? It's so subjective. It's a really fascinating area.
What are you listening to?
I listen to a lot of rock. So The Cure of my favorite band. They're like a 1970s band. I'm a drummer, so I really like rock music. Foo Fighters. I listen to a lot of old rock stuff. So my clients are getting me into hip hop.
I'm sure.
New genre for me, I must admit.
I love it. I love it. Let's dive into some of the mental skills. I know a part of your trilogy is mindset, lifestyle, and habits. I think those are. It's funny when you're a college basketball coach. It's like you're trying to get everybody sort of in those 3 things. So I think they're well put, because you really can't have one without the other. So learning how to incorporate all these things together while the world's changing around you and there's other pressures is super important. Let's just talk a little bit about mindset and how you help your clients kind of build mindset.
Yeah, I mean, mindset is such a critical piece. Is that about, looking at maybe where you're getting in your own way? That's so mainly clients come to me because they're not happy with their performance on the court. And then it's like, okay, we need to look at what's happening off the court. What things do you say to yourself? And generally we might not even notice what we're saying to ourselves. So it's starting to kind of uncover, like, how are you getting in your own way? What limiting beliefs do you have about yourself, which, sometimes are deeply ingrained from, years ago, maybe even from childhood. And so it's kind of uncovering that, like, what do you say to yourself? What are the beliefs that you hold? Do you think about kind of what other people's expectations are? That's quite a big thing. How do you create pressure? And 9 times out of 10, the pressure that we feel is coming from ourselves. It's we've created this. And so mindset is a massive piece that we look at. But it's not just on the limiting side. So I'm conscious I've kind of started off with the negatives, but it's like I was saying about how do you want to feel? Really deep diving into that. How do you want to feel when you're playing basketball? But also, how do you want to feel when you're in other areas of your life? When you're with your friends, when you're at home, when you're in your career, if you've got, other things outside of basketball that maybe you're starting to explore as kind of that next step. It's like, how do you want to feel? And then how can you tap into that through your mindset, through your self-talk? You get to change that dialogue. You get to change the narrative. You're not stuck with these beliefs. We can kind of acknowledge them and we can release them. So it's a huge area, isn't it?
Yeah. I love self-talk. It's one of the hardest things to retrain or have an athlete reframe. That I feel like that's like behind everything. It's like if you can win that battle, it just gets you off to a great start.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about self-talk, and why you feel like it's so important, and also why it's so hard to overcome.
Yeah, so I mean, self-talk's so important. How often we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to a best friend. We beat ourselves up. We can be very critical of ourselves, and that's going to get in your head. If you've just had a game that kind of a play that didn't go your way, and then you're now beating yourself up about you missed this shot, like don't try this one because you're going to miss again. you know you're then going to be making mistakes. You're getting in your own head. You're negatively impacting your performance yourself. Whereas if you can learn to acknowledge it, we all have kind of negative self-talk comes in, it kind of comes and goes. You don't get rid of it completely, but you kind of acknowledge it, and then you choose to bring it back. A lot of my clients use the term reset just in their head. If they notice it coming in, especially when they're on the courts, they just tell themselves to reset and focus on being present, release that. But that, you like any skill, physical skill or mental skill, it takes practice. So we got to do that work off the court. So noticing where negative self-talk comes in, or just how we're talking to ourselves generally. It's not always negative, but like kind of just noticing those thoughts coming in, acknowledging them, and then like you said about reframing, if it is negative self-talk, it's like, okay, well, telling myself that, I'm rubbish, I'm useless, I can't score. Well, that's not really constructive. That's not going to help me to get to where I want to be. So it's like, how can I reframe that and be like, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm working on myself. I'm kind of working to the best of my abilities, or whatever it is. I'm constantly striving. It's like, how can we reframe that talk so that it is constructive?
Yeah. One time I was in a pretty dark place. So I said, let me write down exactly what I'm thinking right now. And I went back and read it. I was like, this is someone would be really worried about me having to read that. Right. And so I think the ability to have awareness about what you're telling yourself, something we try with, with pretty tough cases of that is have them write on one side of the paper the negative self-talk, and then have around the other side of it the positive self-talk, or the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Just to give them some, I work with, you're working with probably a little bit older people, which doesn't make it easier or harder. But working with younger people, I just felt like it was easy. It's better to give them the tools directly right in front of them. To try to say, like, if you say this, then you have to counter it with this, and just kind of go back and forth. Again, I love the idea of self-talk. I don't know if we do enough with it, but I think that ability to reframe is super important. Let's talk about lifestyle some. The lifestyle, we would always talk about our, people talk about culture, and I always say it's like our way of life. Because anything that's done well, you're going to be doing consistently, and it just has to become a part of your DNA. And so let's talk a little bit about lifestyle and your viewpoints on lifestyle.
Yeah, so this is where I'm realizing the work's quite unique as well. So I call myself a mental skills coach, but it's bigger than that because it's this lifestyle piece. So I'm really big on lifestyle design and how you can shape your life to help you to perform at your best. But it's thinking about not just your training, not just how you show up on the game. It's thinking about everything that you've got going on, your relationships, your finances, your health, your self-care, everything. If you've got kids, that's a big impact on you as a person and your lifestyle. And so I think we need to remember that everything is interlinked. So your game, your training is interlinked with everything else that's going on in your life and has gone on in your life. So it's really important to look at how can you perform at your best on and off the courts. Like, how can you live your best life? Because if situations at home aren't ideal, or your environment isn't set up in a way that's going to be conducive to your well-being, or good mental health, or you kind of performing as your best self, then that's going to translate into the court as well, and vice versa. How do you release a game that maybe didn't go your way? How do you release that so that then when you are at home, you're present with your kids or your wife or whoever's around you, but ultimately also, how do we just show up as our best self for ourselves off the court?
Yeah, if you see me writing here, I'm taking down like a ton of notes. 'Cause I mean, I love that. Like you can shape your life to help you perform at your best. And I often find that people they don't recognize the power they have in their environment.
Yeah. It's so important, even if you're, so some of the clients I work with, are overseas, so they're American, they're over here, you're not in your normal home environment, but don't let that feel that just because you've kind of got this, it feels like you're a student sometimes, you're kind of back in halls almost. Don't feel that like you can't shape your environment still. I tell some of them to get candles or, have books and still be conscious about that environment. Music, again, I'm going to bring it back to music. Thinking about, you can create that auditory environment wherever you are. You're on the move, you're on the coach, that's still an environment where you are, and you get to shape that. It's like you can be in control of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's, and again, I'm thinking out loud, it's like what are the 3 to 5 things or 5 to 10 things, whatever, that make you feel most comfortable in your environment, and knowing what those things are. It could be the shower head, it could be the towels you use, just any of those little things that just allow you to feel comfortable and feel like you're owning your place.
Yeah, exactly. And then knowing that you can take that wherever you go. And that's, it's really important to remind ourselves we get to control that.
Yeah, one of the first things when I talk to I have men's basketball clients, coaching clients, one of the first things when I talk to them is I call it owning your environment. And it's amazing that some of these guys hadn't even thought about it, and I'm like, well, you've got to make sure, because there's like a cadence to the season that the cadence doesn't really change. Honestly, the cadence is like the same. Like, once you kind of get the basketball season, like every day it's just going, and there's gonna be things you have to handle. And the off season is, men's college basketball, there's rosters change over, there's all this stuff that's going on, but you can really get used to the cadence of it. The speed of it, it's gonna, but if you're not owning your environment, other things are gonna take you from being able to do your job at the highest level. So like, again, when you get a first time head coach, it's so much of it for me was just like trying to help them and understand the stuff that you got to, like, if you have, let's say you're from a divorce, let's say your kids are with your wife, you're divorced, really being able to sit out well before the season gets there and what that looks like, and well before, each season, and talk about what does that look like? What do we need to do? What are the dates we got to have on the calendar? And sort of let your calendar dictate, some of the things that you got to be able to do. Because, some stuff like family, you don't have a choice. Like you have to do those things, and you want to do those things. So just stuff like that, I think, obviously super beneficial. I'm glad you're able to hit on that, especially. And I always feel like our athletes just didn't they would push back on owning their environment. I would say, like, look, you can go out 3 Saturdays a month if you want, if you just organize your life. If you organize your Sunday right, and you can go out every weekend if you want. If you just get everything right, you get everything down.
And it's the organizing, right down to the really small stuff of like meal preparation. If you've got kids, getting their uniforms. I mean, I'm a mum, so getting their uniforms ready, just like, where can you get those easy wins so that, again, you can perform at your best? You can get the sleep sleep is a massive thing, but you can get the quality sleep that you need, that environment.
I love that phrase, easy wins.
Yeah, you need those. I mean, that's a thing of kind of those marginal gains. It's such a cliche, but where can you have those easy wins?
But the easy wins become big things, right? Like laundry is the easy win. So it's like, if you don't have it, if you don't get that easy win on Sunday whenever you're supposed to do laundry, then the rest of the week kind of goes to, what do you call it? Rubbish goes to rubbish.
Yeah, it goes to rubbish. But that's what it is. Like if it's something that's going to take you like 2 minutes, just do it now. Like just something really quick. But again, we don't really talk about this, how that impacts, again, could impact your performance, because if your environment is kind of cluttered, that's going to impact your mind. Your mind's going to be cluttered. It's going to impact your performance. But we don't tend to talk about these kind of direct correlations. And that's what I'm really fascinated in.
Yeah.
Is, you know, I'm not an expert in basketball, but I'm an expert in people like living their best life, performing at their best. I've just kind of been really drawn to translating this into the basketball space.
Yeah, when I keep thinking like music. It's like how it's
Yeah.
all intertwined, and it's all, you know, every beat, it matters, and where it is and where it's placed and what's behind it and before it, and you know, to make that beautiful song, it's got to all be working together.
Exactly. I love you made that analogy.
Yeah, like when I listen to you speak about it, that's what I think of, is like these notes that are intertwined together, that are in harmony. When we talk about like habits, how do you help people identify the habits that are needed for them to be at their best?
Yeah, so this is a kind of with the mental skills, you know, often people have tried different things. They've maybe tried meditation, they've tried journaling, but they're like, I just don't know why it hasn't stuck. So it's like, okay, let's look at how we can build them in as habits. So again, thinking about easy wins, you know, like habit stacking. Like, okay, what do you do every single day? Do you make a cup of tea? Do you make a smoothie or whatever it is? It's like, okay, well, where can we have that easy win of, you know, maybe you want to start doing some breathing exercises, bring them in really slowly, you know, don't just throw everything into it. So maybe while the kettle's boiling for your cup of tea, you take 2 minutes out and you do some breathing exercises, you know, really small. Like, how can we just start to bring them in? And again, I link it in with the feelings side. You know, I'm going to keep coming back to the feelings, but like, now how do you want to feel? And how you want to feel on the court generally is how you want to feel in your life. Like, that's been a kind of always been a light bulb moment with clients. It's like, this is how you want to feel because it's you. So say if you want to feel confident, how can you set up a kind of habits that are going to help you to feel confident? You know, even small stuff like making the bed. There's a thing of like, you know, if you start your day off by making your bed, you start the day off with a kind of sense of achievement. It sounds crazy. It's so small, isn't it? But it's like, okay, how, and again, bringing in music, you know, what's kind of, how can you set up your morning that's going to help you to feel that way? And then we look at mental skills and how you can, embed habits that are going to help you feel the way that you want to feel. And you're more likely to do them because it's that sense of kind of, connection with self.
Yeah, that's really good. You know, I'm just thinking back to when I was coaching guys, and I'd have one group of guys who I would say I wanted them to be different people on the floor they were off, right? And some people might be need to be a little more fiery on the floor than they were off it, or and then I always felt like I had a group of people that needed to be more like themselves. Like they're really like charismatic, having energy off the floor, and then they get on the floor and they would just try to like focus their energy into one thing, and they just, you know, they couldn't. So I always felt like there was always two, but maybe it is more about just about being genuinely who you are. That's the one thing with the game of basketball, is that it really reveals, because it's so fast paced. It's such a community that you play with. You have to be so unselfish, but then there's moments you have to be really selfish. And then you have to respond to other people. You know, you're not just performing in a silo. Interesting. I think that's really interesting to me. You know, of getting people to be able to just be who they genuinely are. And that's really interesting.
Yeah, but I guess, you know, it's on the other side of, you know, we're constantly evolving and growing. So you don't have to be the same person that you were a year ago. You know, I like personally, I've changed loads. And is that kind of thinking about how do you want to feel? Like, what's the person that you want to become and kind of step into? And reminding yourself that you get to control that. You know, you get to generate these feelings. That's in your control.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I always felt like, you know, when the season was near the end, and we always had our back against the wall, I always felt like I performed the best. And so I basically spent the off season, which is great. It's great to be able to step up when everything matters the most and all that. But I felt like it created some inconsistencies in my playing career and in my coaching career. So what are some things I could do to like just be more consistent with that and put myself in that sort of mindset more often, do you think?
Yeah, consistency is so key. I think all of my clients over the last year have said that's the thing they want to feel is consistent. They want to focus on consistency. So, you know, that's where the kind of the habit side helps really well. So as a kind of a baseline, I recommend that everybody journals. You know, like we were talking about the self-talk. Journaling is such a good way to sit down with your feelings, with that side. but not just on reflecting, but thinking about, who do I want to be? You know, when I step onto the court, how do I want to perform? What does my best self look like? What obstacles might come my way, and how can I overcome them as my best self? You know, use your journal to kind of go deep on that, and really tap into the feelings, because that's from a neuroscience perspective. The more that you can tap into how you want to perform, the visualization side, the feelings of it, you know, how does it feel to be like that on the court? What do you hear? What does the crowd sound like? The more that we can tap into that, your brain feels like you've already done it. That's the amazing thing about things like visualization. So then, you know, you're more likely to kind of step into that person, the kind of the way you want to show up on the court when you are on the court, because you spent time with your journal, with kind of actually like really delving into that, you know, visualizing it. So I'd say, you know, that kind of is like my number one thing. There are loads of tools that we'll talk about, but journaling kind of to begin with. And we're saying about controlling your environment, you know, your journal goes with you everywhere then.
Yeah. What are some other tools if I just can't get into journaling? And I'm a big journaler, so this does it for me. I love journaling. I think it's huge. It's been able, I can even tell in my journal if I go back, I'll go back and look at it at the end of the season, and I can tell when I'm like really locked in a game, because my thoughts are just written in a certain way. They're almost like very pointed, and I can tell when like we're struggling and we're trying to find the answers, because they're kind of like more, you know, it was a Richter scale, it'd be like this. So I'm a big fan of journaling, but if I'm not a journaler, what is something else I can do?
Yeah. So, I mean, visualizing aside from having a journal, you know, actually sitting there and imagining yourself, again, going to that, imagining what you look like when you're on the court, imagining how you show up, but not just thinking about how well it's going to go, you know, because it's not life. Imagining what obstacles are going to come your way, you know, what's going to show up that's maybe going to kind of throw you off a bit, and how are you then going to overcome that? Again, stepping into the kind of the emotional side of that too. You know, so visualization is another one. Meditation, I think often people think of meditation only as a way to relax, but actually meditation can be a great way to energize yourself as well. You know, there are so many different guided meditations out there, but just kind of that being conscious of the thoughts that are coming in and releasing them, and bringing your thoughts back to your mind and body and your breath, that's massively going to help you to feel present on the court, which, you know, is ultimately what kind of we want to be focusing on, is how you can be present. And one of my clients likes to feel like he's like water, like that kind of flowing like water, and meditation is a great way to do that. So it's not always about relaxing, you know, it can be, but it can also be about that kind of, stepping into those feelings, stepping into that behavior that we want to have when we're on the court.
Again, before the games, I'd meditate for anywhere between 5 to 8 minutes, depending on the time. Probably should have got that more consistent. But one of my favorite guided meditations was the Lion's Mind. And essentially it was just, you know, you kind of go through the meditation, but it's about, and I feel like this really applied to basketball. It was about waiting for the right opportunity to strike. Not, you know, like it basically goes through where, you know, if you're waving a bag of bones in front of a lion, is he going to attack? If you throw the bones to a side, the lion going to attack the bones? Like, no, because you're the biggest. The lion wants you. He wants the biggest cut of meat. He doesn't want the smallest cut of meat. Where if you did to a dog would chase the bones, right? Because the dog hasn't tasted flesh or whatever it is, right? So like those kind of guided meditation, I feel like really important, because in the game, it's like, well, we could go for the kill right now with 12 minutes left. And maybe that's the right moment, but it's really about seeking out the right moment and feeling the energy in the place to really strike. So I feel like those kind of guided meditations can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. And you've just tapped on it, you know, the energy. I think that's the thing, is thinking about how mental skills, it's so interlinked with energy. So one thing that I do, which is, it's still seen as quite woo, but like EFT tapping. I don't know if you've come across it.
Talk to me about it. I
love it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So it's self-acupressure.
Okay.
So there are different points in our body, and you basically tap on different points of your body while you say affirmations to yourself. All right. you can either do it as like releasing negative affirmations. So it's like, even though I have negative self-talk, or even though I've had limited self-beliefs, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Or you can go to the positive of, you know, I'm a confident person. I've prepared to the best of my abilities. I know that I'm well equipped for this game. I feel like a lion, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you say these things to yourself while you're tapping on different parts of your body. And that is a fantastic way to kind of step into the energy and really be in tune with your energy, going onto the court. And I think more athletes are using EFT tapping now. But it's still kind of seen as a bit of a woo, kind of a bit weird thing. But when you do it, I mean, it feels amazing.
Give me one. Let's try it out. Let's try it out right now.
I go through the different points with you. So you start tapping on the side of your hand, the kind of 2 fingers. So like firm enough that you can feel it.
Okay.
And you might say something like, I have total self-belief.
I have total self-belief.
And then you tap just above your eyebrow.
Okay.
I'm confident in my abilities.
I am confident in my abilities. Do you keep repeating it?
I'm just making these up as we go along. So then you tap on the outside of your eye. And then you might say something like, even though I have had limited self-belief, I deeply and completely love and accept myself.
Even though I've had limited self-belief, I deeply and passionately love myself.
Yep. And then you go under the eye. You might say, I am fully prepared for the game ahead.
I'm fully prepared for the game ahead. So,
and then under the nose.
When you're touching yourself, are there certain types of phrases you want to use over different ones, or?
It really just depends. I'm just going to pause it there a sec. Depends on what works for you. So some people like the releasing negative self-talk. So the kind of, even though I've had doubts about my performance or whatever it is, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. But other people really resonate with the positive. So I am confident. I have total self-belief, or whatever it is. It really, the words you say doesn't matter. It's more about the kind of the points. And then it's the having that kind of affirmation that you're then, tapping into.
Yeah, well, the number one thing is I feel my blood really flowing.
Yeah, so can you feel it?
Even though it wasn't like a lot of movement, I definitely feel like, you definitely felt differently just by taps, right? Like
it's so simple. And we're like, I won't do the affirmations, but I'll just quickly show you the final points. So you do under the nose, and then you do the chin, and then you do the collarbone.
Okay.
And then you do, this is a weird one. So on the other side, you do like your rib cage. So kind of, there you go. And then the last one, which feels so good, you do your head. So it's like the whole hand, and you just go around in a circle on your head. And that's like, it's always really nice. Yeah. And you just do that as many times as you want.
Yeah.
But then when you've kind of practiced it so much, maybe at home, you're probably not going to want to do this in front of your teammates. Yeah. But when you practice it so much, this in itself becomes like a trigger. And that you can do so subtly. You could just be on the couch and you just do that. And it's like a trigger to just, reset. Or, it might be that it helps you to relax, but it might also be that it helps you to get energized. And that's the words and the phrases that you use. But so I love that you mentioned about energy. Sorry, we've kind of gone off on a tangent, but
I love tangents.
Energy work is so important.
Yeah. Well, I think, everything to me, you better knows about me. Everything's about energy. So you're either giving energy or you're taking it away. So energy is so important to me. And I just think having the right kind of people in your circle that embrace the energy and give the energy and share it. And there's certain people you meet in your life who just offer you no energy. Like you meet them and they give you no, like, I don't want to be around those people. Because I just know those people are going to drain me of my energy.
Yeah. And that's where the lifestyle comes in. We're saying about lifestyle design. Well, being conscious about the people that you're around, are you around energy drainers? And I know sometimes we can't, maybe it's your family and you can't avoid all energy drainers, but you can be conscious about your energy, how you protect your energy. And so that's really important off the court, is, being really conscious about what you're doing with your time off the court, what you're feeding your mind, the content that you're looking at on social media and things like, actually, how's that impacting your energy, which is, ultimately going to be impacting your performance, positive or negative.
Yeah. We would do this. We'd talk about the reset button. We'd touch the top of our hand like it was a reset, like it was like a button there.
Yeah.
And after years of doing that, that still calms me to this day. Like no matter what happens, if I go like reset, and sometimes it's for more energy, sometimes for less energy, sometimes think more clearly. So I think obviously pairing these affirmations or these different phrases that we use with a physical touch does matter. I've experienced it obviously in my life. Maybe that's when you kind of go into, I think the one thing with that, it kind of intersects mindset, lifestyle, and habits. The action then sort of resets, it kind of puts it all in there together.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is you've got to have that. I like the phrase inspired action. We can know about all these different tools and things, but actually without that kind of inspired action to, align your mindset, habits, and your lifestyle.
What was it that you called with the tapping? What's it called?
EFT. So it's emotional freedom technique.
What is the science behind the what is it, NFT?
EFT.
EFT. What's the science behind the EFT?
Yeah, so it's about kind of, I'm still trying to understand it myself as well. There's about different like meridian lines in your body. And it's about kind of how, like, you can, like we're saying about kind of negative self-talk, like how you can interrupt patterns and how you're kind of, like clearing those pathways, from what I understand. It's still quite a new thing for me, but my thing is very much like you experience it, right? And you're like, this works. So now I'm like trying to understand, like, but how does it work? But apparently it's to do with meridian lines in your body, and you're kind of releasing. It is self-acupressure, so kind of releasing different areas.
There's this thing where, like, I don't love flying, and so I was kind of talking to some people about this, and they were saying, like, if you rub your fingers like this, like, like that, and just like a little circle, it's like really hard to have multiple thoughts kind of flowing if you just, so it's probably very similar to that, like adding a small action that takes concentration, that uses multiple parts of your brain and multiple parts of your muscles to lock into it. Even when you say the affirmation, you have to really say the affirmation to yourself before you can say it out loud, because you're concentrating so much on the small action. So I'm sure it's very similar kind of neuroscience to that, I would think.
Yeah. And also, that's so true. Like when you're doing it, you're not thinking anything else. You're not thinking, oh, like, yesterday I didn't play very well, or, got this game. Like there's no space to think of anything else. Again, I'm going to bring it back to music, but like when I'm drumming, I can't literally, like, for me, it's such a mindful activity because I can't think of anything else, because all your limbs are moving and you don't have space for anything else in your brain. So it's kind of that, like, similar, like, again, it's another way to be present.
I love it. What's sort of next for you?
So next for me, I mean, I want to work with, kind of more like one-to-one clients. That's what I absolutely love. And I love seeing the ripple effect of, again, the kind of the lifestyle side, is that the more clients that I work with, the more that they're talking about, this work and the importance of mental skills, but also the importance of kind of uncovering your mindset, optimizing your mindset and your lifestyle and your habits. The more that those conversations happen in the locker room and people are like, oh, I want to know about this, so I'd love to have more clients, but it's also more about that kind of raising awareness and the education around how important this stuff is. I think sometimes we see mental health as like you have some issue or, some particular challenge, and we kind of almost wait until we've got an issue to reach out. But it's like, actually, if we can start seeing mental health as like optimizing your brain, optimizing your mind for peak performance, That's what it is. You don't, when you're physically training, you don't wait for an injury to like, you don't wait to kind of be injured before you then look at how to look after your body. So I'm really keen that we see our mind in the same way. So it's got that kind of education piece as well as directly supporting one-to-one players.
I love it. And where can our subscribers and our following, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on all social channels, but I'm mainly on Instagram. So at Dr. Rosie Mead. That's kind of my main hangout, and I love having conversations on there.
Yeah, I can attest. She's excellent on Instagram. I love her social. Doing a great job with your social, putting different messaging out there. Definitely going to help you expand your brand and just ways, like you talk about, raise awareness. Now we do this thing on last call here, and every guest does this, so it's a generally a pretty good question. It's last call. It's the end of the night. We're having a beer, or maybe call it a pint or whatever.
Yeah.
Call it a pint. So we're having a pint. The bartender has rung the bell and kicking everybody out. On your left side of you, you have someone who's retired. On the right side, you have someone who's actively still working, no family. What two people do you want beside you at the end of the night?
Ooh, and do they have to be in the basketball space?
No, they can be any space.
Okay, so on my right, the guy who is still working is one of my favorite people, Brendan Bouchard.
Okay.
So have you heard of him? He's a high performance coach.
Okay.
He's the guy that really got me into this work in the first place, of looking at, you don't have to be stuck where you are. You get to choose. And if you want to kind of grow and evolve, you get to change your habits. You get to, to look at your mind. You get to change everything that's about you to kind of grow. So he really kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone. So probably without him, I wouldn't be in this space.
Love it.
So I think, he'd definitely be great. And I'd recommend like all of his books. He's really good. And then someone who's retired. Now, this is when I say that I'm not a basketball expert, this is where I'm going to have to check with you. Phil Jackson's retired.
Yeah, I think he's pretty. Yeah. He's retired. I mean, he could always jump back in. I think he's pretty retired. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's out there doing something in the basketball space, but I would consider him retired.
You can count him as retired. Okay, that's good. So he's going to be on my back.
Why Phil?
So I really loved his approach to coaching. From what I've read, from what I've seen, that kind of bringing Zen into that space. For me, that's been so inspiring to kind of hear about that side of his, his part of his coaching.
Yeah, his book. Yeah, his book Sacred Hoops. I listened. I read that once every 3 years. It's like a foundational item for me, and just how basketball can be taught and appreciated. And sometimes it's like seen as this like very macho alpha, which it can be at times. But I think the human connection is so much more valuable, and being able to create an environment where that's appreciated. The good, the bad, the ugly, the strong, the weak, the best. I think it's really important. I thought he's able to really find a way to do that.
Yeah. So he'd be there.
I love it. Well, Dr. Mead, we appreciate your time, and I love the work you're putting out there. You're going to definitely have a friend from here, and continue to have great success. We are pulling for you.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on The Last Call, powered by Speakeasy, where careers grow through relationships, and relationships grow through Speakeasy. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.